That go. Looks like fun.
There you go.
Now, to the highest point on Earth. Getting to the top of Mount Everest is every mountaineer's dream, and many have died trying.
Since it was first conquered 60 years ago, it's now become so busy that the Nepalese government has decided to regulate expeditions to the site. We're joined by mountaineer Alan Hinks, who's the only Briton to have climbed all of the world's 14 highest peaks, including Everest, which you went up. You've been up once, haven't you, actually, to the top?
Once is enough. That's all you've got to do to climb.
Exactly, ticked it off, move on. Is it a lot busier now than when you did it?
It is, yeah. I did it in the mid-90s. In fact, I first tried it in the 80s. There was hardly anybody there. There are more people there now. There's something between 200 to 500 people a year attempt it, perhaps 500 summit. And
you hear stories. The one thing they always, and you will know, but forgive me if I'm wrong, you're really tight on time on the day that you actually summit. And yet you hear stories of people having to wait like an hour, 2 hours for the previous group to get off the top before they can go. That's dangerous.
It is, but there's only one track made to the top usually on the sort of so-called commercial expeditions. So if you've got 50, maybe 100 people attempting it on one day, then they are going to get stuck in a queue. And there is only a couple of weather windows a year when you can summit. So if you've got, 200 or 500 people attempting it, most of them are going to try it on that same day.
Do you think then the number of climbers allowed to attempt to summit should be limited?
I don't really. It's up to them. They don't have to stand around for a couple of hours risking frostbite so that they might have bits amputated. I should say I've never had any of my bits amputated. It's up to them, to make that decision. If they're standing around getting cold, they can go back down. They don't have to do it.
There have been quite some clashes, haven't there? Just recently we spoke about some clashes with some European climbers and the Sherpas, which are used to go to help guide up the mountain. I mean, do you think the number of increasing climbers is perhaps inflaming some tensions?
Not really. See, I'm a guide as well, and these Sherpa guys, some of them are friends of mine, they're just local guides. And I think it's just personalities. I think that was a one-off, and it was some personalities that caused it.
Well, let's talk about the personalities, because it seems like times are changing and people are very much more gung-ho. The world's more easily accessible, I suppose. And so perhaps you get these people who just think, right, this is something else to tick off the list.
I think it is a bit of that with Everest as it happens. It is the highest point on the planet. People want to go to the North Pole, the South Pole, Everest, just like they want to do the three peaks. They want to do Everest, they want to do Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike and Snowdon. People want to do that in 24 hours. It's on the bucket list. And that causes a little bit of controversy in Britain, people doing those three in 24 hours. Some people say, why is there so many people on Ben Nevis in sort of May and June and early July when people are trying all these mountains? So that's what Everest is. It's a honeypot, it's what people want to do. But I always say that throwaway line, if I'm allowed to say it, it's not very PC. Real men climb K2, second highest mountain in the world, or Kanchenjunga, the third highest. They're much more difficult, and so you gain more respect from mountaineers if you do K2 or Kanchenjunga, but you've still got to do Everest. It's the highest mountain on the planet.
It's interesting stuff. I'm going to pick you up when you come back a little bit later on something you said about if you've got there, you don't have to get to the top. Well, you can imagine. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, you have to get to the top.
I can imagine people would. Yeah. Anyway.
Alan,
It's 6:45. Thanks, Alan. You're watching Breakfast from BBC News. Let's remind you of the mornings.